Hello, everyone. Hope you're all keeping well. I also really hope you can hear me. So, if you can't, can you just please let me know in the chat um, before I keep going ahead? Because I don't want to be talking to myself. So if someone could just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, all right. Hopefully you can. If someone could just give me a little thumbs up just to make sure you can hear me. Oh, you can. Thank you, Samuel. Perfect. Okay, cool. Let's crack on then. Now that I know you can hear me, rather than me talking to myself. I hope everyone's all right. Whatever time of day it is, whether it's evening, whether it's you're waking up early hours. I hope everyone's doing well, and welcome to another one of our live streams to do some mindset bits and a psychology call. So hopefully, and you're hearing me too. Perfect. Hopefully everyone's excited to get into this. And I know there's a couple of questions that have come through already, which is really, really cool. But please just keep those coming through, because it's really helpful that the questions are targeted towards the people that are here. So as I'm talking, if you're thinking of some questions, please put them in the chat, and hopefully you can get the most out of it in the next half hour, 40 minutes or so. So for those that don't know me, and it might be the first time that you come along to one of these Q&As, but my name's Barney, and I'm the sports psychologist that is working for MatchFit. You might have seen some of my messages in the apps, and you might have had a couple of opportunities to see some bits online and around the platform. But we run one of these once a month where we essentially get people together and we try and ask as many questions as we can. So please just pop them in the chat box there, and I'll try as best I can to answer them and get round to as many as we can do. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into the first question, because I know one came in earlier, and it's this one. I'm going to put them up on the screen as well, so people can see it if you're going to watch it back. So this is the first question. So my son is nearly 10 years old, and I'd be interested to hear your advice to help him express himself in games, play without fear and making mistakes, and with confidence to find his voice. So this is a really good question, and there's quite a few parts to this if you try and break it down a little bit. So the first bit I always look at is like the age of the person. So again, if you're a parent, or if you're a player, or if you're even if you're a coach watching this, like the age of 10 is a fantastic age for your brain development. So your brain will be growing and growing and growing throughout those adolescent years. So the age of 10, you've got great opportunities to grow and learn and develop. So I think the fact that you're looking at doing something around this at the age of 10 is fantastic. And the other thing I'd then say is, because you're 10, like there's loads of things that are going to be really, really difficult to do within this. So the playing without fear bit, I would say, like, it's really hard to play without fear. I think if you're going out and feeling a bit nervous, or feeling a little bit worried, or feeling a bit fearful, if anything, I think it's a nice thing, because it shows that you're passionate and you care and you want to try hard. If you went out there and didn't feel that, I'd be pretty surprised, because it's a normal response to have when we're going out and trying to play football and trying to push ourselves. So like the fear is it can be a really, really good thing. The struggle with it is when it starts to impact our performance. So like here, when we're talking about our making mistakes and the impact that can have, then sometimes we get caught in our own heads and we go, oh, I don't really know what to do. I'm a little bit worried. You start to play a bit safe. You start to go within your shell a little bit. And so what I would say is like go and express yourself and keep things really, really simple. Just go and like strip everything back. And what I mean by this is when we try and go and develop confidence, as the last bit of the question here, I think really start slow. So don't try and go from I'm not feeling confident to really confident. Like just start really slow. Like it's basically on a continuum. Like you're not confident or not confident. It's like that all the time, depending on the environment, depending on what's going on. So I'd say start really small, like, and get yourself some small little wins. So in training, if you're trying to work on finding your voice, like how many times can you ask for the ball? Like how many times can you speak to the coach in between plays? How many times can you show for the ball and use your body language to be vocal and out on the pitch? Like how many times can you do something really, really tiny in training? So then if you build it well enough, you can go and then play in a match knowing that you've got those small wins under your belt, you've developed in it a way. So I would see it as really try and simplify, get those small wins in there and go, what's really controllable? And if you're finding your voice, it's calling for the ball, it's using someone's name, it's getting yourself in position and calling that person's name so you're showing for the ball, it's keeping your head up, it's checking your shoulders, it's doing all those controllable things that will then build your confidence over time. So I'd say it's a really common question, something like this, around like the fear of making mistakes, but strip it back, keep it really, really simple. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to be worried about stuff. There's going to be the fear at times, but it's part and parcel of it. Like, go back to those real controllable key bits that just help you ground yourself in those moments and do it in training, because then when you come to a match, it will just give you that little bit of confidence going into it. So yeah, really, really cool question. And hopefully that's given a bit of a sense of where I'd go with that one. But really cool question. Also, sorry, my voice seems to be going a little bit. So if it starts to go croaky, I do apologize. The next question is, I'm going to take this one down and we'll go with this one. So this question is around any advice for approaching a coach who you feel is treating your son unfairly, i.e. not enough playing time. Good question. And again, like, I think there's some context around this. I think I know this is quite a common challenge that a lot of people experience, and not even within football, but in lots of different sports. And then if you look away from sport, how do we treat people fairly versus unfairly? It's a thing that's in our society. So it's a really big question. But when you really boil it down to something like this, when you go, the advice that I'd probably give in this situation is like, try and have some sort of understanding like around the game time. So rather than labeling it as my son's not playing or my daughter's not playing, therefore the coach doesn't think my son or daughter's good enough. Like, another way to frame it would be like, let's just try and have an open conversation around this. Let's try and engage and have some understanding around why so-and-so is not playing, because then what you've got is something to go and build upon. Like, if you get some clarity from the coach and they say, oh, look, like so-and-so, this player needs to play in this position because they're doing really well in training, or in this game, we need to go for slightly different tactics, or against this opposition player, we need to try and match them up with this specific player. Like, there might be things that, like, reason as to why you might not be playing in those situations. So I always go, like, without trying to go to from one extreme to the other, let's get some clarity, let's get some understanding of it. And then you go, right, to really like try and stretch yourself and show yourself. You go, well, what do I need to do? What do I need to evidence? What do I need to do within training? What do I need to do within a match? What do I need to do by speaking to my coach to say, like, fair, like, I'm not getting enough game time, but you know what? I'm going to I'm going to see the opportunity to go and stretch myself and challenge myself and take the opportunity on. Because I sometimes find in these situations, like, we can go one or two ways. You can go one way where you go, I feel really threatened by this coach because they're not selecting me, and therefore I'm going to think that I'm not good enough. The other lens you could go is, I can see the opportunity in this. I can see the opportunity to go, okay, I understand your point, or you don't have to agree with the point, but you've then got an opportunity to go, well, I'm going to rise to this. I'm going to challenge myself. I'm going to stretch myself. I'm going to push myself. And so you can go always one or two ways with how you view one of these situations. And if you're a parent looking to approach a coach around this, like, again, like, timing of it. So ask the coach, like, when is good to talk about this? Because I know sometimes in training, there's loads of stuff going on, like, they're very busy at times. Like, so just ask the question, like, when would be good to catch up on this? And then if you've got some time, go, just be good to get some clarity around this, some understanding, so that I can go back and help so-and-so get back into the team or work on certain things. So yeah, don't shut down the relationship. Try and keep it as open as you possibly can, and work on those things that, again, you go back to those controllable things. What can you do to get yourself back in that situation? So yeah, I'd say, like, try and work it in that way. Find a time, ask the question, be curious, understand, and then progress to try and, like, work on your own areas to get back into team. So but it's a really cool question. And again, like, it's a really common one that we hear a lot of the time. So I'll put that one down. People can hear me. There's a question here that has come in around. Also, if my audio dips at any point, just let me know, and I can try and adjust it. So the question here from Samuel is, how can I perform to my fullest without being afraid of making mistakes? So again, like, it's a great one, because, like, mate, I would go out and I would make the mistakes. I would go and try it. I'd go and put yourself in situations where you go, that you might not be comfortable. You might be making lots of mistakes. You might be challenging yourself, but ultimately that shows that you're trying to stretch yourself. That shows you're trying to elevate your performance. Like, and you might see lots of those situations where, and again, like, there's different ways of viewing this, but there's these zones that we sometimes refer to when we're learning and we're developing, and they're used a lot in education, and they're used a fair old bit within sport these days as well. And those zones are, if we take a training situation, okay, so there might be one situation in training where you might be sitting in your comfort zone. Okay, so your comfort zone is almost like your bread and butter, the stuff that you know you can do, the stuff that you've repeatedly done over and over and over again, and you're pretty comfortable with it. You don't really need to almost think about it. It's like almost second nature to you. And then you go into that stretch zone. So the stretch zone then becomes like where you go and try things. You go and try a new skill. You go and try a new pass. You put yourself in a challenging situation. You put yourself in it under a little bit of pressure, and you try and stretch yourself a little bit. And then there's this other zone that's known as like the burnout zone, or like the really like challenging one, where if you stretch yourself too much over time, sometimes it can become just a little bit too much. So you need to like bring yourself back into that comfort and feel supported at times. So I would try and sit within that stretch zone, sit within that area where you're pushing your boundaries a little bit. You're feeling like you're trying to push your development. You're making a few mistakes, but again, you know it's part and parcel of you stretching yourself. And then over time, like, it's all about trying to like understand your relationship with mistakes and failure. Because when you first start making mistakes, you start looking at your coaches, you start looking at your parents, you start looking at teammates and going, oh, like, I'm making mistakes. They think I'm either rubbish or I'm not good enough, or you start to doubt, or you start to compare yourself. Like, but actually, like, if you're going out there and you're making mistakes, but your reaction is decent, and your reaction is, I'm going to try and win the ball back, or I'm going to try and keep my head high, I'm going to try and communicate, I'm going to try and have a positive reaction, then that's what people really want to see. Because like, you're going to go out there, and no one's robotic in a sense that we can program someone, go and plug them in and say, go and perform, you're not going to make any mistakes, because it's not realistic. We're human, so we're going to make loads and loads of errors. We're going to make loads and loads of mistakes. So I would really try and encourage you to go and just like sit in that stretch zone, sit within it, push yourself, make the mistakes, but come back to how you evaluate them and review them over time. So really, really cool question though, Samuel. And if I haven't answered that, then come back to me in the chat. But it's a really cool question. Let's go with this one. Jonathan. Hello, Tom. Jonathan has said, how do I stay connected with the game when I make multiple mistakes? So again, mate, Jonathan, I think something like this is similar to the one we just went through with, I think it was Samuel, wasn't it? Yeah. So around the mistakes bit, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because you'll make those multiple mistakes, and sometimes if you go out and you take a situation where you started a game, I don't know what position you play, but say if you've just kicked off and your first touch might be off slightly, or you've then tried to overcompensate by hitting a diagonal ball and it's gone out, or you've tried to do something that you might not normally do, and you kind of compound that error over time. So what I would say is, like, in order to stay connected, like, bring it back to those really simple little wins. Like the very first question we had was around keeping things simple, like those controllable aspects or those small wins. Like, go back to those really important basics. So the example would be if you've just had a bad touch, again, which we're going to do, if you've passed the ball and you've given the ball away, if you're one-on-one with a goalkeeper and you've put it wide, like whatever it might be, then go back to a really simple process. And that simple process could be, I'm going to use my gestures to get back on the ball. I'm going to scan, I'm going to check my shoulders. I'm going to use my voice to like get myself grounded and back in the game. I'm going to communicate. I'm going to do something really simple that, if done consistently well over time, will get yourself back into the game and allow you to build again. So don't try and think, I've got to try and overcompensate and go for something to make up for the mistake. Ground yourself, keep it really simple. And if you do that consistently, then your confidence will start to build, and then you'll start to be able to do things and try things as the game goes on. But again, try and avoid that kind of all or nothing, like skipping between the two. Like, bring it back to a simple, controllable process, using your voice, taking a deep breath, I don't know, whatever it might be, like speaking to someone on the pitch, speaking to a teammate, like anything, just to get yourself back into that moment. So hopefully that's something that I'd say to try and stay connected, like keep it really simple and go back to that small win. But really, really cool, Jonathan. Let's go. Elvis has put, I think we learn our mistakes and change. I think we learn through our mistakes and change our ways of training. I think it's a really good point, because trying to learn from mistakes, and there was an acronym that I remember learning, and now I can't remember it now, but it's essentially around like mistakes are almost like your first step in learning and development. Like, and I'll try and see it like this: like if you're going out and training and again giving the ball away, or making mistakes, or getting angry or frustrated, I don't know, whatever it might be, like again, like we can train that in a way where we go and simulate training situations. And I know one of the big things that is sometimes used in sport is around this thing called simulated practice or simulated training. Now, essentially what this is, if people haven't heard around it, it's around trying to take really challenging moments or things that we know are going to happen in a game that frustrate us or anger us or disrupt our flow. And we go, right, how do we train for that? How do we go and put that in a training session to go, oh, we've kind of looked at that and we've kind of prepared for that. And an example of this would be like something that like we all exposed to is around like pressure. So pressure can influence people in lots of different ways. People can rise to pressure and they go, yeah, I'm going to try and embrace it. I'm going to see the opportunity in it. Or they go the other way. They go, I see the threat in it. I see the worry in it. And I start to panic and I start to do things that maybe you wouldn't normally do. And again, if you try and simulate training where you increase that level of pressure, so You might have spectators come and watch training sessions. You might have things to be won or lost. So there could be consequences for an action. There could be like really key moments where you're either put under the pump. So you're starting by a couple of goals down and you're having to try and get the game back. Like trying to increase levels of pressure within training. So then when you come to a match day situation, you've planned for a couple of those what ifs, and a couple of those situations just become a little bit more plannable or a bit more actionable. So again, I'd see training as a really good opportunity to learn and train some of these and develop some of these things. Because again, like when it's a match situation, there's so many uncontrollable areas and challenges that happen. So like make training uncomfortable. Go and train in difficult situations. Go and train in situations that really try and stretch you, knowing that it's training at the end of the day. You can make your mistakes, you can go out and do all those things, but you're training to try and like almost simulate some of those mistakes that are going to happen. So yeah, like see the opportunities in it. I would definitely try and push towards. I think that I'm gonna keep going through these. Tom has put, how can I beat the world keeper? Now this is actually interesting because I was doing a session recently where I was teaching someone to do certain skills within football. Okay, so they were learning to do little tiki-taka movements. They were learning to do keepy ups. They were learning to do like different skills that they were trying to push themselves to do, and they kept giving up. And they kept like trying to do something and then just kept like reversing and just kind of going back into their shell and then going, I can't do it. So what's the point? I think something like this is interesting in a sense, because you go like test yourself, go and push yourself to try and go and do a skill and know that you're going to make those mistakes. So link it into the previous questions. Like if you're going to try and challenge yourself to do something like this, you're going to make loads of mistakes. You're going to fail it numerous times. But again, like where's the opportunities in that to kind of keep going, persist with it, be consistent, keep trying over and over again. So I'd say again, like there's a threat with this or there's an opportunity, and the opportunity would be it's a really hard thing to do, but I'm going to go and try and practice it over and over and over again. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, Tom, but I think yeah, it's when it comes down to those kind of skills within football that we want to try and practice. I think that persistence and the opportunities that exist is a great one. So yeah, hopefully that helps. Elvis has put, how can I prepare a kid who comes already with fear for matches? I'm not sure if I've read that. How can I prepare a kid who comes already with fear for a match against a big team? So okay. It's a really good question. I would say a couple of things. Yeah, I'd say a couple of things. So the first one is like coming with that fear. Okay, so again, like when we're using language such as fear or mistakes or whatever it might be, like that's going to sit there. That's going to be there. Like because again, like when you're going into unknown, when you're going against an opposition that you might not have played, you might be playing in a place where you've never played before, where you've got to travel and get to a certain destination. Like there's an unknown around that, which sometimes can cause an element of fear against that. So I'd firstly go, well, let's normalize it and go like, particularly if you're young, again, I don't know how old your child is, but like I'd normalize that to go, that's really common. And the second thing I'd then go and say is, well, how do we try and mitigate or try and limit it as much as we can? And we go, well, if it's going to be there and we're going to be a bit worried about it, then what we can do is kind of go back to those kind of key principles around what you can do to prepare for a game. So you might be getting your nutrition right. You might be getting your sleep right the night before. You might be watching a few clips of your performances that where you performed quite well, or you might be going and doing a little bit of extra in the evening around like your left foot, right foot off the wall, or practicing a certain skill that you're trying to do. Like rather than thinking about the game and the unknown bit, go to, well, what can I do at the moment? Can I just go and eat something and drink something to prepare myself? Can I go and get a decent amount of sleep? Can I go and like I say, watch a clip of me previously? Can I go and speak to someone around my performance and things that I'm going to try and do the next day around those really simple, controllable bits? Like, because I sometimes think we get caught in our own heads, and we get caught in that unknown bit around, I'm planning for a match, I'm thinking about a match, I'm not sure what's going to happen. Yes, of course, you're not going to know everything that's going to happen, but go back to those really simple, clear processes that you can go into and go, I believe that if I go and do these well enough and I get my preparation right, and if I turn up and I stretch right and I warm up and I communicate well and I hydrate and I get my nutrition right, then suddenly you go, well, I've prepared myself as well as I can here. And then what will be, will be. So again, it's just trying to take the pressure off it slightly rather than going, oh, I've got to go and perform here, the unknown bit. It's, hang on, I can do loads of stuff here to bring myself back to those preparation, the key focuses, the key controllable aspects that are going to help you. Yeah, hopefully that answers the question a bit. Yeah. And yeah, the normalizing it, that it's a really common thing. Like that fear will be there, particularly when you're going and playing in matches and particularly players you might not have come up against before as well. Samuel's put, also in training, I played great making dribbles, plays and goals in the game. When I'm calm and freeze in the middle of the game, mess up and playing the fullest. So how can I fix that? Oh well, a few things, and let me write them down here so I don't forget them. So I'd say the first thing I'd say is, like, you might, some of you might have heard about this, but there is a response to stimuli that we sometimes experience within sport and day to day, and it's called like the fight, flight, freeze kind of response. I don't know if you've ever come across that at all. And without getting into the detail around it, like that's a response that is caused by something that happens in a game, okay, or in a situation day to day. So if you haven't made a good pass, or you've dribbled ineffectively, or you've done something in a game that you're a bit frustrated with, some people's response might be to go and freeze. So they might not know what to do next, and that could literally look like not getting on the ball, not checking your shoulders, not communicating, not trying to work hard for your team. You're literally frozen still. You've then got another response, which could be, I'm going to fight this. So a fight would be, in a football sense, it could be, I'm going to really fight and challenge to get back into position. I'm going to use my language of communication to be really vocal on the pitch. I'm going to really get into like a bit of a duel with my opposite number. Like, again, you're choosing to try and fight that situation. And the flight would be, well, I'm done here, because you're almost like walking off and saying, like, coach, can I come off? Like, I'm not sure what to do in this situation. So the flight is, you're out of the situation, you're going, look, I'm probably not, I don't know how to respond to this. So there's different situations that you can go to in these situations. But what I would say, like, when it comes to like trying to build and develop that confidence again, if you are frozen or not quite sure what to do, I would go, well, how do we develop and build confidence? And we go, right, to be confident, there's essentially like three main things that we probably need day to day, or in most situations. And you go, I've got to have a certain level of relatedness. So I need people around me. So if you've got connection and you've got people that you feel well supported with, then that can give you a bit of confidence. You then go this thing called autonomy, which is essentially like, do I have control of something? So in those situations where I've frozen, can I do something controllable to get myself back in the game? Like, do you have the ability to recognize that and do that? And the last one is a thing called competence. Like, the competence is around, like, do I actually feel like I can do this based on previous games, previous experiences, seeing other people do things? And suddenly, if you get good people, you get something that's controllable, and you a feeling that you can do something, suddenly confidence starts to flourish a little bit and starts to build again. So again, like, within situations like this, like, check yourself, like, check the people around you, communicate, build those relationships, connect with people, find a controllable action. You take a deep breath, get yourself back on the ball, check your shoulders, communicate, like, do it consistently so you feel competent in doing it. And suddenly you go, well, then I'm starting to build myself back into a game again. So again, it's it's a great question. And you can go in lots of different ways with lots of these questions, can't you? But like the fight, flight, freeze bit, if you haven't looked about it too much, like have a look around that, because there's some fascinating things around our natural response to different situations. And then that theory that I've just kind of gone through there is something known as self-determination theory, for anyone that's really interested in it. And it's how we develop confidence or a level of motivation with those three key principles. So again, like if you want more information on that, go and have a dig around on those concepts, because they're great things to come back to. Great question, Samuel, as well. Really cool. David has put, how do I deal with anxiety before the match? Any tips to feel more confident and relaxed before the match? David, I'd probably really similar to actually that last question, in terms of that confidence bit. I'd say go back to and connect around that, because again, like the anxiety or the response that you have, again, could be caused by lots of different areas. The anxiety may be caused by a previous performance. It could be caused by the people that you're around. It could be negative self-talk. It could be some doubt. It could be all sorts of things that cause that anxiety. But what I would really try and do is like try and notice patterns, like when it comes to the anxiety. Like, is it when you're going away from home? Is it around certain people? Is it when you've been asked to do a certain job? Is it when you're being played out of position? Like what are the patterns that lead you to feel a little bit anxious about performances? And then I go, to feel more confident, bring it back to those three key principles around, am I around good people? Am I sharing this dilemma? Am I talking to people? Am I connecting to my coach and saying, look, I'm a bit worried here, like, and how can we share this dilemma together? How can we work this out to make me a little bit less worried? Like, do you feel like you're in control of something? So again, like when you're doing your warm up, your preparation, are you being told, oh, David, you go and do this? Or have you got a sense of, I've got to say on what I do here. I can go and tell coach, look, I need this in my warm up, because then you're felt a part of it. You're not just done two, you're felt a part of something. So again, like build those little things in, because they can make a really big difference if done consistently over time. So again, like go back to the previous response on some of those things around confidence, but at the anxiety bit, I'd go like, well, what are the patterns? Where do you feel that anxiety or that response, like where does it come from? And also what it looks like, because from person to person, that will be shown really, really differently, because some people hide it and they'll go, I'm feeling really anxious, I'm feeling really worried, but I need to put on a brave face. You don't have to put on a brave face in these situations. You can go, look, I'm sharing this because I am worried, I'm a bit concerned. You share it with your coach, you share it with your teammates, you share it with the people around you, and suddenly the dilemma is shared between a multiple groups, not just in your own head. So yeah, never feel like it's yours to work out. Like, go and share the problem, because the more you do that, the more connected, and we go back to that relatedness bit, the connection bit. If you can open up to someone and say, look, I'm a bit worried today, like that vulnerability can sometimes bring people a little bit closer. So again, go and try it and see what people come back with, because those connections will build, and that can ultimately help your confidence as a result. So again, mate, I think I've gone in lots of different circles there, but hopefully, like, you can see how they kind of link in and come together. But yeah, good, really cool question. Let's take this down. Leanne has put, my son Marley is 12, and just how to adjust to a new position without getting into his own head. It's interesting. So are you moving position because a coach? Have I read this as my son Marley is 12 and just asked how we can adjust to a new position without getting in his own head? Have you been asked to? I'm curious now. Have you been asked to play a different position by a coach, or are you wanting to try and go into a different position? Yeah, I'm just curious for myself here. But at the same time, I would say The adjustment is good. So the adjustment is something that, and particularly these days, and you watch lots of top teams, and it doesn't matter kind of the level that they're at, whether it's stuff you watch on the TV, whether it's if you go down to your local club and start watching, if you watch whatever level it might be, like the ability to be adaptable and adjust is so important within team sports, football, where you've been asked to do loads of different things at different times. And I'd say, like, in this situation, like, give yourself time to adjust. Like, you're not gonna nail the position straight away. It's going to be really challenging. You're learning new situations in the pitch. You might be standing in different positions. You might be being asked to be a bit more defensive or a bit more attacking, depending on what your role is. Like, so you're going to be within your own head. You're going to be like trying to adjust and struggle with it. But I'd say, like, it's a good thing, particularly if you're 12. Like, try and practice that adaptability. Put yourself in lots of different positions where you've had exposure of playing lots of different positions early on. I think it's a great thing because, one, you get an appreciation and a view from different perspectives on the pitch. Two, you get another insight into some of your teammates and what they might experience because, again, you've played different positions. And three, you're just increasing your adaptability and flexibility as a player, which we know by watching whatever it is on TV or whatever level. People are asked to do different positions all the time now. There could be some games where managers go from a 4-4-2 to a 4-3-3 to a 3-5, and you've been asked to do different things all the time. So if you can be flexible and adaptive, it just gives you a bit of a string to your bow. So I'd see it as a bit of a badge to go, yes, it's going to be hard. Yes, I'm going to be in my own head. But if you're doing it at the age of 12, like by the age of 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, if you've played lots of different positions, it's going to be really good for you in the longer run because you've got that flexibility and adaptability from doing it earlier on. So yeah, I'd give yourself time to develop it. I don't think there's a real answer to this other than, like, no, it's going to be hard at times. It's going to be challenging, but in the longer term, you're going to get some really cool experiences to help with that perspective, to help with the understanding, to help with that level of connection. So yeah, I don't know if that actually answers it, but I'd say it's a really good thing that you're looking at trying to be and adjust to new positions early on, and just keep at it and keep reviewing. So after a game, if it's really uncomfortable, go, that was really hard, and here's why, and talk around that, because then you've got a pattern to go, in that game I found that really hard, and then in a month's time you might go and think about your game and go, that's not a problem anymore. Like, I've seen that, I've dealt with that, and that's okay. So again, like, just try and manage that ongoing, review your games, talk to your parents, talk to your coach, talk to your teammates, talk to your mates. And the more you do that, the more you go, well, I'm learning, I'm developing, I'm increasing my flexibility and adaptability. So yeah, again, hopefully that gives a bit of an insight of my thinking on that. I can only do a couple more. And I think this has worked quite nicely because I think there is only two more questions, to be fair. But I'm going to answer these two questions, and then let's wrap it up, unless there's more that come in. But Jonathan's put, how can I get motivated to win more defensive duels? I'd say it's motivation as a principle. Is dependent on the individual. It's a really hard thing to pull towards. What I would say is similar to confidence. Like, motivation is on a continuum. So we're not either motivated or super motivated or unmotivated. You'll flip flop, or you'll decrease and increase, like, throughout a day. Or even within an hour, you could be like feeling really, really good, and then 10 minutes later, you could be feeling really low in motivation. So it does this all the time. It's not a fixed state. It's not a fixed position. So therefore, what I would say is be able to recognize and check in with yourself on when you are feeling motivated. So the reason I say this is because, like, when you're feeling really good or really motivated, why? What is it about the situation? Is it, again, because you're doing stuff with people? Is it because you feel really in control of something? Is it because you feel like you're doing something that's your bread and butter and really comfortable with? Is it because you're stretching yourself and challenging yourself? Is it because you're you've got a smile on your face and you're having a bit of fun. Again, like there'll be loads of things that motivate people very differently, and the thing that motivates me could be really, really different to what motivates you. So what I would try and look at this is more around like increasing your level of self-awareness around these, because those people that are very self-aware around what motivates them and drives them and what pushes you are very good at being able to recognize in the moment and then going, well, this is what I need. So again, like what I would try and do with something like this is the next time you're feeling motivated in a game or a training or a run or whatever it might be, just check in with yourself. Like, what's going on for you? Why are you enjoying it? What's motivating you? Make a little note of it, and suddenly, then, if you do it consistently over time, you've got a log of like things that motivate you, and that's really powerful. Rather than me sitting here and going, "This will really help you," like, which is you can go and read in maybe any textbook and you go and pick up, but like it's so personable, it's so meaningful to the individual. Like, so again, just being able to increase your level of self-awareness, the number of times you're checking in with yourself and recognizing what is it that's making me feel good today, like what's happened, and suddenly you build a log of motivating factors to move towards, and that's really, really powerful. If you've got a month's worth of that you can come back to and check in on, that's much better than going and saying, oh, setting yourself a goal and reaching it is going to help your motivation. Like, find those internal drivers that are really powerful, because I would sometimes say, like, you might have heard people talking about what are your core like values, what are the things that drive you, what are your things that really motivate you and get you up in bed in the morning, like, and all of those things will be very, very different to any person that's put a comment in this chat today, between me to you as well. Like, there will all be personal drivers and values that are very different. So trying to recognize them within yourself is the first step. Writing them down and then use them as a driving factor and recognizing them is really, really powerful. So I would use that as a way of trying to increase your motivation. And then in relation to the defensive duels bit, I would go, if you suddenly have found a list of things that help you feel motivated, use that on the pitch. Go and take it into those situations. So if it is, for example, you notice that you feel more motivated when you've given yourself a bit of a G up, or you're doing something with someone, or you've communicated with someone, or if you've prepared well, or if you, I don't know, whatever it might be, then suddenly you go, well, if I do all those things, that's going to help me go into the game and be in those defensive duels and be more present and battle and connect with those things. And again, like, I just think that's a really more meaningful way to go around that, rather than I don't know, setting yourself a goal or something to move towards. So yeah, try that out. And also, I'd be really interested. I think it's fascinating, like the individual drivers, values, those things. Like, so keep logs of them and yeah, because I think it's fascinating what can come out of those things at times. And the last question I'm going to do is come in from Elvis. How can a player react or behave if the coach shouts at him? How can a player react or behave if the coach shouts at him? Again, you can go those two branches, can't you? You can go, your threat mindset is going, I'm done with that. Coach has annoyed me, has really frustrated me. I'm not going to listen to that, and I'm going to become frustrated and just see it as a bit of a, I'm not good enough, what's the point mentality. So that is an option as a reaction. The other side, you go, coach might have shouted at me, but what's the rationale? What's the opportunity? What's the understanding of that? Like, because again, it's probably come from somewhere, or it's come from a place. If it hasn't, you can be curious about it and understand and speak to the coach around it. But I'd say you can go one or two ways. You can go the word towards, I see it as a threat. Coach has shouted at me. I'm just going to withdraw. I'm going to get myself in the situation. Or I'm going to go, okay, that comes from a place. I'm going to try and be curious. I'm going to try and understand it. I'm going to try and use it to see the opportunity exists to try and benefit my performance. Because particularly if it's before a match, like, that could really massively like send you within your shell, and it could really close you down as one reaction. And the other reaction is to go, well, let me understand it. Let me be curious about it. Let me try and like gauge where that's come from, because then that's going to help me go into the match to have something tangible to go to. Because if you don't have that, you're going to go into a match and be going, I'm really worried. I didn't get clarity. I'm not sure why they shouted at me. You start to worry about things. You get into those negative spirals. If you do have the clarity and you have had an opportunity to talk to it or challenge it or be curious around it, suddenly then you've got something tangible to go, okay, I might not agree with it, but I've got something to go on. And then you can go into the match around, well, Dave said I need to do this, and here's what I need to do. So it just gives you a bit more clarity of thought in those moments, rather than coach doesn't like me or shouted at me, therefore I'm just going to withdraw. Which again, I've seen people do, and it's a normal human reaction. So don't, if you do it, like, it's a really common thing. But again, like, what's the other lens? What's the other way to see that? Which could be, okay, like, let's understand, let's be curious, let's connect with it, let's use it as a way of like trying to drive and take into my performance rather than seeing it as a negative. So yeah, hopefully that answer, because really good question as well, because it's definitely really common. The final one, because I've just seen it come through here. Also, how do you deal with negative thoughts and words from people and myself? Lots of different ways, but I would say there's two main bits in here, isn't there? So that there's the negative thoughts that you experience. So the negative things that go on in your head, the negative self-talk that you might experience. There's a way of managing or dealing with that. And basically, I'm going to break this into two bits. So I'm going to deal with the individual bit and then the how other respond bit. The individual bit. So if you experience a negative thought or a critical thought, don't get yourself into those situations where you go, I've got to try and be positive here. So I've seen so many people go, I'm feeling really rubbish, but I need to feel really good, or I need to feel really positive or really happy, or try and turn a negative into a positive. That it's not realistic. It's really hard to do, to go from negative to positive. Like, I would, the thing I found really, really useful is finding a neutral space. So what we term this is, you go, here's your negative thought. Okay, so you get yourself into a negative spiral, which is, coach has shouted at me. I don't think I'm good enough. Teammates don't think I'm good enough. Therefore, I withdraw. So there's like a negative spiral there, isn't there? Another way is and then the reverse would be, coach is shouting at me, I need to be super happy. Like, you don't. Like, find a neutral space in that. Find a space where you go, I'm feeling criticized, or I'm feeling quite critical, or a bit, I'm doubting myself. What's a neutral thing? Well, a neutral space would be, I can try to get myself back on the ball. I can try to get myself in a decent position. I can try to control my breathing. I can try to, like, it basically gives yourself permission to go, look, I might be feeling a bit negative, and I don't need to jump to the positive, but I'm going to try a few things that get me back to a middle spot. And if I do that consistently, that's going to take me to the happier spot. So rather than going from one to the other, you get yourself back to a neutral zone, which is the controllable aspects, those bits in that middle ground, the grounding techniques, the mindfulness, the breathing bits, all those bits. Bring yourself into that zone. Then suddenly, if you do that consistently, you build towards a pretty happier place, a more consistent pace. And that feels more achievable, I would say, rather than going negative thought, I need to be really positive. Which, how do you do that? You go, negative thought, noticed it. What can I connect to? Which is, I'm going to connect to being more vocal. I'm going to connect to get myself back in position. I'm going to connect to speaking to a teammate, a controllable action. If you do that consistently, you go, oh, I'm back in the game here. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling all right. I'm getting around it. I'm keeping things simple. I'm keeping things controlled. So again, you're shifting between places rather than going from one to the other. You're shifting between, which I think is a hopefully a containing way to see it, rather than oh no, I don't know if I can do that. It should feel quite containing. And the other thing I'd say is, from the words from other people, comparison is natural. So particularly within team sports, like, you've got opposition, you've got teammates, you've got players potentially coming into your team from other teams and challenging your position. You've got players shifting between age groups. You've got you've got loads and loads of different things there around, like, comparison and what could be going on in those situations. So to be able to control the words that other people say is really, really challenging. But what you do have is a response to those words that come, again, you can go to the one side where you go, I'm going to take it to heart, I'm going to feel really criticized, I'm going to feel really negative. Or you can go the other side to be similar with the coach before. You can go, it's a perspective, I can hold it, don't have to agree with it. People are going to have their views. It might be that there might be some comparison with other people, but that's part and parcel of team sports because there's so many people involved in it. So you can see it as a perspective. And what's important is the way that I view. So the response part, which is the bit that you can control, Samuel, here. So again, like, acknowledge that you're going to get this feedback, you're going to get critical thoughts, you're going to get critical views from other people, which is really hard to deal with at times. But be curious about it, understand it, ask where it's come from, connect with people, because then what's going to do is go, you're someone that rather than just goes and says, oh, I'm just going to withdraw, I'm just going to be frustrated, I'm going to become really negative, I'm going to be angry about it. You go, I get people are going to have different views, different perspectives. I want to try and understand. I don't have to agree with it, but I'm being curious to see your point of view. And then you can go into your performance to go, well, what do I need to work on? What do I think I need to listen to that people have told me that actually they've got a good point? And what things can I go to that I go, well, I also know I need to do this because I've thought about my performance myself. And these are the bits I need to work on. So you've got an option to agree, disagree, challenge, accept, whatever it might be. But the curiosity just gives you that space to go, well, people are going to have their opinion and it's fine. But it's your response to those situations that is the key thing. So yeah, really, really good question. Okay, David's put one in. This is this last one now, and then I do have to go. What are some of the positive words that we can speak to or help before a game? Again, it's hard because you don't necessarily need to go in with a positive. You don't have to be positive before a game. Because it's very dependent on what that really means, isn't it? Because like you can go in and feel really, really good, and you could be saying really positive things to yourself in your head. But ultimately, like, people respond very differently to different situations. Some people love it in a game where they get challenged, or when someone goes in a bit late on them, or gives a little bit of chat, or if there's something that gives them a little bit of like extra motivation. Some people thrive on that and absolutely love it. So sometimes we don't need to always be really, really positive, really, really upbeat before a game. What I think is more beneficial and more achievable is to go, what are the things that I'm doing to give myself the best preparation going into the game? So that could be your nutrition, that could be the sleep, that could be your hydration, that can be your stretches that you're doing, that can be like having controllable aspects of the team warm up, that can be talking with coach, getting absolute clarity before a game around what is expected of me going into that match. Like, do those bits. So gain the clarity and seek that, because then go into the game, you'll then be able to respond to lots of the different situations, knowing that you've had a really good preparation. Because what I don't want to do here is go, like, if you feel really positive and you're saying really good things about yourself before a game, in a game, you could get taken out first minute and suddenly things aren't positive, things are really challenging, and it can become really frustrating. Whereas if you know you've got clarity, you've got controllable aspects, you've prepared well, you give yourself a really good basis to go, I'm going to give myself a good chance of playing well today, knowing that I've done a really good preparation the week before, a couple of days before. And it doesn't matter necessarily if I'm feeling really, really positive the morning of. I've got a really good basis of a week's training. I've got clarity. I've spoken to people. I've worked hard. I've trained hard. I've slept well enough. I've done those controllable things. And then going into the game is around like the management of those situations. So the management of those situations around like what helps me feel confident. How do I maintain those levels of motivation that we've spoken to today? The bits around like the grounding techniques and bringing yourself back to a neutral zone. Like, bring those parts into that, bring into the performance element, but don't discard all the other bits that go a week before a game, which is your training on a Monday night, is training on a Wednesday night, is doing that consistently well, is speaking to coach, is sleeping well enough, is doing all those things. And then you go and give yourself a really good opportunity to play well on a Saturday or Sunday or whenever your game is. So I think that's probably where I'd go to with something like that. But yeah, but people have their own ways of doing it, and it's about just trying to check in with yourself and finding what's right for you in those moments. But really cool question, and hopefully I've given you a bit of a breakdown of probably where I'd look to go with that. Right, I'm gonna go. But that was really cool, and there were some great questions that came in there. So I really appreciate that. And remember, we do this once a month with these Q&As. And yeah, like they're fantastic. Some of those questions that have come in today have just been class. So I really appreciate that. And it really helps me because I always prepare a couple of questions just in case no one has any questions, but it makes it more meaningful and engaging for the people here, hopefully, when they're your questions. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. And I will see you. I'll see you back on here in about a month's time. Keep an eye out because sometimes they chop and change around like the days and bits. So keep an eye out for the exact date. But yeah, roughly there'll be one a month. So keep an eye out for those. Okay, take care, everyone, and I shall see you very soon.